As I mentioned earlier, successful people are intensely solution-oriented. The fact is that life is a continuous succession of problems and difficulties without end. This river of problems is only interrupted by the occasional crisis, which makes the problems seem small in comparison. In fact, if you are living a busy life, you will probably experience a crisis of some kind every 2 to 3 months throughout your life. You will have business crises, family crises, financial crises, health crises, and other crises. The problems and crises never stop. They keep coming like the waves of the ocean. The only thing you can control is your responses to these problems and crises, and therein lies the key to your success. Successful people respond effectively to problems. Ineffective people do not. Successful people take a deep breath, relax, and think clearly. They look for the good in every situation. They seek the valuable lesson. Above all, they focus on the solution, on what can be done rather than what has happened and who is to blame. There is a methodology that you can use to solve any problem. It requires that you approach the business of problem-solving systematically and in an organized fashion. Just like there is a process for solving mathematical problems, there's a process for solving business and life problems as well, and you can learn it for the rest of your career. Step 1. Define the problem clearly. A problem properly defined is half solved. It's absolutely amazing how much time is wasted floundering around looking for a solution when no one is quite clear about the problem. Step 2. Ask, what are all the possible causes of this problem? Look for both the obvious and the not-so-obvious causes of the problem. How did it begin? What are its origins? What triggered it in the first place? What is the critical variable that changed to cause the problem to happen? What assumptions were made that led to the problem? Just like a doctor conducting an intensive examination on a sick patient, you should thoroughly dissect the problem before you attempt to solve it. Step 3. Ask, what are all the possible solutions? Avoid the natural tendency of most human beings to leap from a problem definition to a conclusion regarding a solution of some kind. Always ask, what else is the solution? Sometimes the best solution is to do nothing at all. Sometimes the best solution is to gather more information. Sometimes the best solution is to realize that this is not your problem and pass it on to someone else whose responsibility it is. Step 4. Once you have identified several possible solutions, ask, what must this solution accomplish? The only way that you can judge the attractiveness of a solution is to determine in advance what you want the solution to accomplish. You've heard it said that the operation was a success, but the patient died. It's very common for us to initiate a solution and implement it, but the problem is not only not solved, but it is worse than it was before we took action in the first place. Be sure that the solution you select will accomplish the purpose you had in mind when you started the problem-solving exercise in the first place. Step 5. Once you have decided on the ideal solution, assign specific responsibility or take responsibility yourself for implementing the solution. Set a deadline for implementation. Set a measure by which you can determine if the solution has been effective. A problem-solving discussion that does not lead to agreement on a specific solution, accompanied by the assignment of personal responsibility and a deadline, is a problem that will come back over and over again without resolution. Practice this systematic method of dealing with a problem over and over until it becomes a habit of thinking. You will be amazed at how much more effective you become and how much better your results will be using this method. In studying warfare and battles over the centuries, I've always been fascinated by the situations where a smaller force defeated a numerically superior force. In every case, what I discovered was that the numerically smaller force was far better organized, more methodical, and more orderly in its plan of attack and execution than was the larger, more disorganized force. By the same token, an ordinary person with a system or recipe for problem solving can run circles around highly intelligent or well-educated people who throw themselves at their problems without a method or process for solving them. These two methodologies, mindstorming and the systematic approach, give you a tremendous advantage in mastering the inevitable problems and difficulties of life. Always be sure to think on paper. Write things down. There is something that happens between the brain and the hand when you write. You get a greater sense of clarity and understanding with regard to the issues involved. You think better. Your perception is sharper. You actually become smarter and more creative by the very act of writing everything down as you go along and before you make a decision. One of the most powerful creative thinking exercises you can practice is called scenario planning. In scenario planning, you play down the chessboard of life and you imagine what might happen sometime in the future. Even though the future is largely unknowable, certain trends taking place today will continue into the future. Certain events taking place around you will affect these trends, if not interrupt them in different ways. Completely unexpected events will arise that will require that you change your plans completely.